Good morning. Today is Christopher Columbus Day, and since there are so many people attacking Christopher Columbus and the conquistadors emotionally, it's appropriate for us to stop and have a think about this. First, let me remind myself that in the 1920s there was a vicious civil war in Mexico between the Catholics and the communists won. They do what they always do. They established a small group of intellectuals that form the ruling class, a huge gap, and then a huge group of people who do nothing but do the producing for that small group of people who are the intellectuals, the state society. And the huge group of people, the citizenry, they live in abject poverty. Let's continue. Oh yes, and then there was that National Geographic special before Christopher Columbus. And as Columbus landed in the New World and the conquistadors headed inland, they segued to a commercial. The music rose and the announcer said that they had brought with them an unforeseen disaster. And then he paused. Then the conquistador knelt on one knee and held out his hand to the young boy standing in front of him, and he opened up his hand. And as he opened up his hand, the announcer said, disease. And as he said the word disease, the camera zeroed in on what was in his hand, a Catholic cross. Let me remind myself that the definition of propaganda is controlling behavior and emotions and ideas by concealed methods for selfish purposes. Let's continue. Oh yes, and then there was the Pope going halfway around the world to Canada and sitting there apologizing to self-proclaimed leaders of the indigenous community for white men imposing their values, teaching the Indians how to read and write, and wear clothes that fit. I'm nobody, but there are two things I look for. I want to join your group, and this is what I have to offer. And there's nothing of that in the Indians. And the second part, this is how I'll make your children better off. I'll remind myself that they don't even think that way. It doesn't even occur to them. And they caused poverty. They caused our children to live in poverty. Oh yes, and then there's this idea. If I was in charge and I turned around and told them, okay, you're going to live in your culture. You take your clothes off, you cover yourself with cosmetic cow dung, you go hunt down a lice-infested coyote and eat the thing, or commit cannibalism. But when you have a toothache, don't you show up at a white man's dentist, you go find a medicine man and watch him shake a rattle and take peyote. There would be people knocking on that door behind me, accusing you of abuse. How could you possibly do such a thing? They always want to be in charge. They never want to live in the world they build. As for me, I'll be a Yank, race relegated to an endearing quality of your parents. I'll straighten myself up emotionally. I'll will the good of another person, and I'll do it because of Christ's divinity as faith, or the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, that dot on the lowercase letter I, God and country. Then I'll be a good person, and I'll be a good husband if I choose that profession, and a good father if I choose that profession, and a good citizen. And this is my culture. We'll see you. Thank you for listening.